Welcome to part 2 of our adventure. The killer snake served as an exciting appetizer, but my lust for violence and story remained. A small wood button on the ground calls to me. An obvious solution of this might be to press it, but Dark Cloud isn't about the obvious solutions. It's about friends we gain through unrequested acts of kindness. This button required friendship, and I knew just the guy. I returned to Bear Boy, eager to provide a shoulder to lean on. He was a damaged and fragile man, but not a broken one. I provided him the bone pendant that was only moments ago in the belly of the killer snake. It was Fudo's, and by bringing it here to this place, we've returned him to this mortal plane. Temporarily, of course, as a spirit. Oh, it's not exactly a spirit. It's like a spirit voicemail, I guess. When did he have the time to record this? Alongside being the greatest warrior ever, Fudo must have had future vision since he predicted that this message would be received at a time when evil forces would require his son to become an ally to the savior of the world. Seems unlikely, but not impossible. He was the greatest warrior guy. Bear Boy is frustrated with his father's request. He just found out that the rumors were true and that his father was now a spirit. Fudo explains his body was gradually being weakened by an illness. I'm no doctor, but that amount of blood seems pretty severe to me. Much like his son, Fudo had a fragile sense of pride and didn't want to be defeated by this unseen enemy. So instead, he went to the woods where the fearful killer snake dwelt. Today I learned that dwelt is a word. Suspecting that the powerful killer snake would be a worthy final opponent, especially since he went to this fight with an intention to lose it, he finally felt that he could let go and maintain his pride. The villagers he brought with him watched the slow and probably more violent than described final moments. They, to this day, refer to him as the strongest warrior guy. He didn't want to die as a what? Bro, it's 2024, you can't be saying stuff like that. Anyways, Bear Boy lashes out at his now absent father. Grief is a difficult and painful process, and I will not make fun of Bear Boy for his suffering. But boy did he move past it quickly. And he moves like a Freddy Fazbear animatronic. Bear Boy has joined the squad. Now I could press that wood button and open the door. What a reasonable way to do so too. Oops, let's try again. It was at this point that I realized that the snake wasn't the final boss for the Wise Owl Forest. Similar to the previous dungeon story progression, we got a pretty strong mid-story climax followed by a lull, presumably leading up to the true final boss. It's interesting that they have this template for both these areas. Are we going to see this repeated with each new dungeon? Let's return to the river. I had finally connected all of the river, but still, the dam needed to be opened. The small elves that have been trying to kill me thus far came to my aid. This doesn't really make sense to me. Water quickly filled the river, and we were one step closer to rebuilding this town. Immediately, my reptile brain demanded I go fishing. I wanted to see the little fishies bite my bait. I wanted to see if the fish here were any different than the fish in our hometown of No Room. They were different, I think. I'm not going to Google exactly what fish exist in what town, I just want to play the game. Now, I want to draw your attention to the water. Like, really look at it. I find it mesmerizing. It's oddly cohesive with the rest of the game's visual design, and at the same time, water like this wasn't very commonplace in the PS2. Even higher budget titles like Metal Gear Solid 2, which came out later in the same year, didn't have water like this. It's one of the many details that stands out to me and makes Dark Cloud feel like an irreplicable experience. This might be biased, but I think its water VFX has survived the passage of time. But what do I know? I'm not an artist. My insatiable need for fishing had been staved off for now. But man, I didn't want to do any more grinding. You reach a point where you become numb to the experience. This wasn't uncommon for this era of RPGs. Grinding is still a part of the core experience in most MMOs. You know what I do when I can't handle the grind? I turn off the game. But this was for a YouTube video, so I had no choice but to press on. And into the home of the tree ant. I doubt anybody's going to agree with me on this, but I think that the tree ant is actually super cute. And before you ask, wood. Next question. The tree ant speaks and, well, it's gibberish. Fortunately, we have the hunter's earrings, and so can understand what they're trying to tell us. I ponder whether or not I should own up to my good deeds. I decide to show my true colors in hopes of receiving praise. The tree ant goes ballistic and then sneezes out a serpent sword. I skipped over this interaction earlier, but this is where we received the sword that we would later use to defeat the killer snake. An interesting feature of this sword is that it's an unbreakable weapon, but only until you defeat the snake. You also can't upgrade it until then. It has 2 weapon evolutions as well, which is interesting. They put a decent amount of effort into making sure this weapon has a longer term viability, despite it only being available once throughout the entire game. So anyways, we return to the future where the snake has been slain and I'm actively rebuilding the town. I talk to this older gentleman, and he asks how my wife's been. Bold of you to assume that somebody would date me, let alone marry me. Speaking of love interests though, in the opening of this game, we actually save a girl who you would assume is a love interest, but this is not the case. Instead, I've saved myself for adventure, and this guy's roasting my ass. I finished building Kai and Momo's house, and I'm rewarded with yet another cutscene. Why is everyone in this town a professional jumper? And I don't mean grandpa on the roof, I mean like literally jumping up things and such. Look at that! My skeleton would explode from a leap like that. The jumping lady in the booty shorts gives me a dog water item as a gift. I'll probably just sell it for bread or water instead. Her shorts are really odd. Nobody else in the village wears this sort of clothing. I wonder if they had some characters that were recycled from a previous design. Just thought I'd point it out. While we're on the topic of odd character designs, look at this guy. He's like a marshmallow thing. His name is Koskis? I don't really know how to say his name. Koskis is definitely one of the more unusual characters in this game. He says he can't go outside of this house, like he's trapped here. What's preventing him from leaving? Ah yes, the classic I ate too many sweets and have grown so large that I can't leave my home anymore situation. Happens to the best of us. He asks for grass to be growing on the roof of his home, which seems like a bizarre request given that he can't even step outside to see it. I put some grass on his roof and now his home is complete. Let's see what he has in store for us. His appearance is daunting. He's nearly 3 times our size. Maybe he'll have some super powerful weapon. No. Instead, he offers us a mostly eaten lollipop. Normally, I'm fine swapping spit with people, but I'd prefer a fresh lollipop for myself. Additionally, he offers us his home as a storage unit. In my long playthrough, I only ever used the storage mechanic once. It's a very player-friendly feature, but if you're just playing through the game without going for anything extra, then you'll likely never even need it. Okay, so in the first video, I mentioned a furry couple, Bunbuku and Kalulu. Turns out that I was wrong and that they are siblings, not a couple. Bunbuku is the older brother and Kalulu is the younger sister. I regret making this mistake, but they are PS2 characters, so sometimes it's hard to tell. Additionally, I found out that the older brother likes their house near the river because Kalulu has an issue with bedwetting, so she's presumably much younger than I perceived her to be. I think her height is what threw me off. Any which way, I've brought her the lollipop that was gifted to me just a moment ago. I'm a regifter. Their previously unsettled conflict has been resolved, and Bunbuku will likely repeat his mistake many more times. In return for saving him in this dire situation, he gives us a special medicine leaf. Maybe it'll come in handy down the road. I restore home after home, sipping my Mountain Dew to reward myself for all of my hard work. At this time in my life, I was really into Mountain Dew for some reason. Ro, the man of the house, the Mushroom House, gives us the stoic and soulless glare that I've come to associate with old 3D video games. We appreciate the view together, and then head inside because I deserve thanks in the form of physical gifts. Ro loses his balance and plummets to the first floor. He seems pretty unaffected by his fall. I'm telling you, everyone in this village has some anti-falling technology or something. Like, nobody's being hurt from jumping or falling. It's so weird, because it's a recurring theme in this town, but I don't know if there's any reason for it besides like showing verticality maybe. I return to the forest feeling spoiled by the many gifts I've received. I enter the 17th territory, one which I've not yet visited. Presumably a special event will occur. I need an item for this. Using my superior intellect, I come to the conclusion that we should plant the moon seed here, and then I drink more Mountain Dew. A sprout has appeared, but we're still going to need one more item. Clearly, a sundew is needed here. This was immediately obvious to me, but not because I'm smart. There were only 2 quest items in my inventory when I got here, and now I only had 1 to choose from. The sprout quickly grows into a beautiful set of stairs, leading us up towards a new place. I ascend the stairs and we enter into the final boss for the Wise Owl Forest. What will it be? An even bigger snake? A monkey? It's the even bigger hairy ape that I referenced in the beginning of the first video. He uses his gorilla powers to throw a large boulder at me. I dodge with unexpected elegance, and now can see that the boulder has lodged itself in the entrance. There's no way out. I'll have to peel this dude's banana if I want to survive. The Fairy King shows up to inform us that the Forest Keeper, Master Utan, is under the influence of the Dark Genie. I know I'm whining about nothing, but the Fairy King seems to show up to reiterate the obvious to us, and never really brings any insight to make his interactions feel interesting. I only ever made it to this boss once as a child, so his whole fight was entirely unfamiliar to me. My enemy opens up with seed spitting, very monkey-like. I eat some cheese to restore my health and take my first shot at him. The first hit on any enemy is an important moment in Dark Cloud. There are a few different elemental damage types, and you hardly ever can guess which one's going to be effective. The slingshot I just used is primarily causing wind damage. Maybe it isn't the most effective, but doing more than 1 damage with the slingshot was unusual at this point in my playthrough. I attempted to throw some bombs at him as well. They do a decent amount of damage, and I desperately wanted to clear this boss in my first attempt. I even busted out my Inferno gems, which are just kind of like fire bombs, I guess. Either way, both did 24 damage, which is probably worth it. By now I'm seeing a pattern. If I just step into his melee range, he'll take a swing at me and leave himself open. I abused this mechanic, of course, and continued to chisel away at his health. After 5 minutes of doing this, I'm beginning to face an even worse threat: boredom. You see, I have a short attention span, and if I can't reward the little lizard in my brain, then I'll start losing focus and making mistakes. So I chug a stamina drink to double my damage. Instead of 3 per hit, we're doing 6. That means clearing this boss in half the time. The lizard is pleased, and I'm free to focus a little bit longer. It goes on like this for some time, and then some more time. This game would really benefit from a health bar showing the boss's current and total health. At this point, I could be 5% through his total health or 95%, and there's simply no way to know. After what feels like an eternity, I finally deliver the killing blow. This marks another significant moment in my playthrough. The second village has been cleared, and I eagerly await what's to come. The monkey moves the boulder that was blocking our progress and warns us that the chief of the next village doesn't like humans. I guess that might be foreshadowing, but the writers seem pretty inconsistent, so I wouldn't bet on it. Now, the next village, I have to warn you, has a very unusual name, and I can't help but to feel like this was a translation mistake. I don't know. We enter into the next village at last. Brownboo. I'm going to avoid saying that name ever again. I did so much research on this village's name and couldn't find anything about it. I saw a Reddit post where somebody else asked if the name of the town felt weird. Mostly people thought it was just bathroom humor. Anyways, this town is where the rabbit folk live, and it's actually really pretty. The music reminds me faintly of some 70s love music that my grandma used to blast in the car. It's not bad music, but it doesn't feel like this really fits in here in my opinion. I think the instrumentation is just really odd. They really wanted to show off this town, and it's easy to see why. This is the only town that you don't have to rebuild. It's carefully constructed and has a lot of really unique geometry. Also, it's worth mentioning that the rabbit folk are also the moon people that were referred to by Dran in the last video. I like the idea that rabbits are more advanced than humans in this world. Just kinda cool. We see a gathering of rabbits who likely are the governing body for this town, and the arrival of a human has caused a panic. They agree that they'll have to go with the "be aware of nights when stars fall" plan. This doesn't feel mysterious at all. I feel like I'm watching some kids argue about a pretend story's next plot point. I suspect that the development team are losing momentum. There was already so much content, and now we're breaking out of the prologue's established tone and atmosphere. I've made a few games during my career, and it's very easy to build content when you have a foundation. Shifting the style or pace of a game is really difficult and requires a lot more time and energy. They did a decent job, and this village serves as a transitory experience between major sections of the game, but I wasn't ready to continue forward just yet. I needed to finish what I started.
Oh here we go again.
Using my special eyes and keen sense of style, I built the most aesthetically pleasing yet functional village I could. I built a moat around the owl's home to draw more attention to his shop. I take this job very seriously. Next, I did door-to-door surveys and made sure to know every single change that would be needed to reach 100% customer satisfaction. My hypervigilance for happiness is as crucial to their day-to-day lives as the sun rising and falling. If it weren't for me, these little villagers would live every day forever in a slightly perturbed state of being. This process of collecting information, rearranging the town, and then analyzing whether or not you've carried out their requests correctly is immensely satisfying. My boy Benny Frankie once said, "A place for everything, everything in its place." I do not follow these wise words in my day-to-day, but Lord knows I try. To make up for the Roblox Twitch streamer hell pit that I call an office, I put extra loving care into this virtual town. Not an orifice skipped nor a crevasse left untouched. I am the quiet but constant change that we all know to be certain, but have only ever seen in hindsight. Heed my words. Your town will be beautiful. This is the only truth. And this guy has a sick as heck outfit. He looks like he's cosplaying as a cosplayer. His name is Gob, and he lives within the skeleton of some giant creature. There's a handful of very cool characters in every town. Like, their visual design is cool, but their dialogue almost never matches up, sadly. Anywho, we've done it. The town is complete. Let's see what kinds of treats we're gonna get this time. Again, the tree ant goes ballistic, and then sneezes out an item. It's level up powder. This is great, but it's a single-use item, so we're getting almost no mileage out of it. So far, this kind of blows. Dran gave us a whole new attack. This guy's handing out dinner mints in comparison. He's also started referring to us as darling. Maybe I've ingested too much gender juice, but he's really affirming Tone's femboy identity here. Oh yeah, the main character's name is Tone, by the way. Bearboy makes an appearance and immediately complains. He also feels deserving of a reward. The tree ant responds by giving him his deceased father's battle axe. Bear Boy just came to terms with his loss a day or two ago. This tree ant is wild. He follows this gracious gift-giving moment by passive-aggressively saying that he has a lack of faith in us. If he wasn't so cute, I'd cut the flow of water from the river and send him back into a tree coma. We return to the village with a name that does not need saying. We're closing out this chapter at last. I approach a ladder and look up. Something is falling towards me, very slowly. Classic coconut drop technique. I'm left concussed and unconscious. I wake up and find out that I've been restrained. This is overkill, isn't it? These are the moon people and I'm a scrawny teenager. I respond quickly and honestly to every prompt, and they threaten me with water torture. This is getting out of control. Someone barges in and calls the mayor by name. This stranger insists that the tiny boned teenager bound above the water is telling the truth. And just like that, no harm, no foul. We're going to look into the magic sphere together. Oh, a dark castle inside of a dark cloud. Oh no, not the evil genie. That's all these people need to see. Now that we've formed an alliance, maybe we can work together to seal away the genie again. But the rabbit folk insist that they can no longer seal him away because they've lived here for so long that they lost the ability to do so. Like house cats that have forgotten how to hunt. They think that they might have a shot if they have the moon orb, which controls the moonship, but they've lost that as well. These guys are really just dropping the ball left and right. The conclusion is that we'll have to go to Queens to find the moon orb for them. This is, broadly speaking, everyone's favorite part of the game. But not for us. Instead, this is the end of this chapter. I can't wait to see what's in store for us.